Greetings and welcome again to the most irregular podcast on the planet. This is Dallas Area Opinion. It is Saturday, May 3rd, and the reason I am stating the date is because I am doing my best not to throw half the electronics on the planet through my window. Yes, I don't tell people this publicly or go out and do it on social media. I am a Catholic, and Donald Trump's depiction of himself as the Pope has me irate. I originally planned to do this podcast for a different reason, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I've got to get this off my chest, brain, heart, soul, whatever you want to call it. It is infuriating that the President of the United States posted on social media a picture of himself depicted as a Pope. It is horrendous. And it has now been about, maybe 3 or 4 hours since I first saw it. So I don't know how long it's actually been out. And I have not seen, and I've been watching the news this morning, anybody from the Catholic Church decrying this. It's blasphemy that this man has done. Look, I know the Pope is not God. And I know some people who aren't Catholic have some very strong opinions about the Catholic Church. But really, no matter where you're from, to have someone like Donald Trump depict himself as a pope in 2025 and think it's either a good look, a joke, or whatever is got to be just insane. This is horrible. Horrible. And I know Catholics that support Trump. It's their decision. I'm good with it. We've talked it out. And we don't talk about it much more. I have not heard from them on this, and I'm sad if they don't think this is appalling. But I'm not going to can't have these discussions anymore. But the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops or other people have got to come out and say, this is horrid. This is just horrid. I'm somewhat at a lost words. I could come up with some more words, but we don't want to put them out in public. I do not know why the White House reposted this depiction. Someone in the White House has got to be a bit smarter than this. If these were teenage boys who had done something as a joke, I mean, I was stupid as a teenager. You get over it. You get mad at him. You get over it. But this is the President of the United States. This is not a joke. This is appalling. I don't know. I mean, I do have much more to say, but I don't want to spend this whole podcast talking about it, but I had to say something, especially at the first, because we as Catholics cannot accept this as anything close to acceptable behavior. It's just, he's like spitting in the face of Catholics. Okay, I'm going to lose it here. It's just horrible. He just spit in the face of Catholics. United States Catholics around the world, and everything else involved with the fact that the Pope just recently passed away. It's disrespectful. I'm trying to keep myself civil, so I'll stop. But something had to be said, and I hope Catholic leaders in the United States say something, and say something very straightforward about how horrendous this is. There's a certain few Catholics who showed up at his prayer day a few days ago. They better be the first to say something. Okay, now, originally, we all know Republicans are struggling with town halls, and that's what this was originally going to be about. Beth Van, is it Diane? I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. She is the representative, the 24th District of Texas. She's a Republican, and she held a phone-in town hall earlier this week. I went to her website. Actually, I had help. Else thought about it. I didn't think about it. To even see if she posted it. She had a phone town hall 30 minutes before it started on her website, her congressional website. She posted that her town hall would start in 30 minutes, and she gave the phone number. So the phone number was available publicly for everybody, but I didn't see a lot like in the local news or anything like that about it. The actual town hall I could not find on the website. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying I could not find it. We looked through the website, kind of clicked through, especially right after where she posted the town hall was going to start in 30 minutes. Anyway, I knew before it was coming and I recorded it. Now, I didn't start recording it until it was 2 or 3 minutes in, so I don't know what the introduction was like, what was said at the introduction, but we're going to play some of it. We're going to go through some of it. There are people who call in. I will try to edit out their names that ask questions because I don't have, that they just called in for this town hall that seemed to be limitedly publicly available. I don't like that. I think that's pretty weak on her part to do it this way, especially if it's not, the recording is at least not even on her website. What's the point of having the town hall? What's the point of doing this if not everybody has a chance? I don't know if everybody has a chance to respond. I certainly understand that things have gotten out of hand in Republican town halls, and I think people have a right to speak to their representative, most definitely, but they also have a right to have a respectful meeting, representatives, that is. So it's kind of a push me, pull me on that. Like I said at the beginning, I do think it was weak that it was a phone-in town hall, which limited the ability for people to speak, and they were definitely able to kind of monitor the questions coming in. I understand, and again, people deserve a respectful town hall, but this was weak. Sometimes you got to face the fact that people are mad. I don't know of a better compromise, but I'll stop there. We'll get started on this. Again, this started a couple minutes into the recording, so I don't know what the introduction was. I'm going to play some of it. I'm going to try to make the whole thing available just as it is on my website, but I'm also going to include it with this podcast. We're going to talk about some of the stats that she said, some of the questions she avoided, including the very first one that came up, which I don't know, was a 10-minute answer, give or take. I haven't timed it. It was quite a long answer. That one sentence answered the question the person proposed. But let's get started. Let's listen to a little bit of it, and let's talk about it.
Participating in the question. You can see people who I'm meeting with, businesses in the district that we're touring, interviews that I've had, op-ed pieces that we've written. It will really give you, I think, more of an idea of what our office does. I serve on the Ways and Means and the Small Business Committees in Congress, and the Ways and Means Committee is the chief tax rating committee in the House. About 70% of all of the dollars that come out of Congress go to the Ways and Means Committee. And we've been working to extend and to expand the 2017 Trump tax cuts, our Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And that has definitely and directly benefited our community. How do I know that? Because we have had businesses across the district tell me that over the last several years. And if Congress fails to act by the end of 2025.
Now, she says that, I think she'll say it a couple more times in the town hall, yet she offers no verifiable statistics at this point. She just says because people have told her. I wish she had gone a little deeper into that. She'll talk a lot about small business in this, but she does bring up stats in some of her questions, but there's not a lot for this topic. Moving on, here we're going to keep going.
These tax cuts will expire, and we can expect to see our taxes increase. 90% of all American taxpayers will pay some of the highest taxes that we've had in our nation's history.
That's interesting to note because these tax increases that are coming are really just the expiration of tax cuts that were done in 2017, Trump's first term. Taxes were not at the highest level at that time in our nation's history. A bunch of hyperbole, I think. Tax rates had been coming down for years, especially for the upper income people, the wealthy. They were down quite a bit starting from the Reagan years forward. So to say the highest tax rate in our history, that's hyperbole, if not an outright lie. Going on.
In our congressional district alone, just in Texas 24, the average taxpayer is expected to face a tax hike of $4,294 in 2026 if these provisions are not extended.
Again, that's going back to the way they were, let's say, in 2016 before the tax cut. And again, those numbers. She's not really offering how she came to them. That could be based on factors without quite a few deductions that are available to people, things of that nature. We don't know how you would relate it to what it was before and why all of a sudden it goes up, the average person in her district. We have somewhat of I don't want to say, I could say wealthy district. There are some upper income people in this district, this area. There are quite a few nice homes, quite a few. So maybe that $4,000 sounds like a lot dollar-wise, but in relation to what?
So obviously we have been hard at work prioritizing extending the 2017 Trump tax cuts to deliver for all of you. We're also prioritizing deregulation. The Biden administration imposed over $1.8 billion in new regulations, many of which burden businesses and consumers alike and in our district. In response, House Republicans have passed multiple bills to repeal these regulations, cutting red tape and freeing up our economy.
I'm sorry, I don't have the number of actual House bills that have been passed in Congress this year, but I do not think there have been what she said, numerous ones to counteract all the legislation, the regulations that she was talking about. Sorry about that. Quite a few, but I don't know, when she says $1.8 billion in regulations, I don't know if she's talking about specifically for her district or overall. A number that small makes me think it's just for the district, but it was not clarified either way.
Additionally, I've also introduced several pieces of legislation this Congress, including measures to support small businesses, our job creators, and American families. If you're just joining us now, I want to thank you for taking time out of your evening to be here. As a reminder, you can press *3 at any time this evening to ask a question. And when you're calling to ask a question, you'll have up to 2 minutes to ask your question, and then we'll have to put you on mute in order to get as many questions answered as possible. So last week, we sent an email asking people to submit questions for this evening's teletown, and I'm going to start taking the opportunity while we're getting people online and while you're putting your questions in the queue to address some of those right now. So one of the first questions that we have, it was submitted by Terry and Carrollton, and they asked, does Beth Van Dyne support the due process clause of the Constitution? And if so, what is she doing to ensure that everyone receives due process and that people are not sent to brutal foreign prisons without due process of the law? I really want to thank Terry for sending in this.
Okay. That question had 3 parts about due process. Does she support it? And then do people get it? And then do we send people to brutal prisons in El Salvador? Okay, this is the answer. Quite a lot of information is going to be thrown out, but does it answer the question? Again, one sentence in about the middle of this answer, I'm going to touch on some of the stats that she brings up as she goes through her answer.
Question is fundamentally about illegal immigration and if our country is moving forward with mass deportations and how we're moving forward with deportations. But I want to just quickly hit some of the key stats about how the illegal immigration invasion under Biden has been utterly halted under Trump. Catch and release is over. Since Trump took office on April, and until April 1st, only 9 illegal aliens have been released into the U.S. Let me repeat that. Only 9 illegal aliens have been released into the U.S. That is a 99.9%.
She does not cite sources I couldn't find either way, pro or con, if that is correct.
9% decrease in illegal border crossings. When we look at illegal border crossings just from March of this year compared to last year, they were down nearly 95%. There were over 137,000 illegal boarding crossings just this time last year. And the number of unoccupied illegal alien children arriving at the border is now at record lows. Trump administration is now mandating DNA testing for adults claiming a child at the border because we saw way too many of these kids were being used for human trafficking, for child trafficking, and to get illegals over the border by claiming that they were their children. This is something, by the way, this DNA testing is something the Biden administration refused to do even though they knew it was a problem. And we knew that it led to record high child trafficking over the past 4 years. So to answer the question, yes, I absolutely support due process.
Like she said, there's the answer, but it doesn't address the other two parts of the question. But she goes on with her stats.
This question is coming up because there was an arrest and deportation of an MS-13 gang member, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, whom extremists in the propaganda media call a Maryland dad. What the legacy press didn't tell you is that Kilmar was arrested in the company of high-ranking MS-13 gang members. He was a known associate, if not full-fledged member of MS-13. And by the way, he did have due process. 2 different judges determined that he was a threat to our country because of his MS-13 ties, and he was ordered to be deported from the country. And on top of that, Kilmar was pulled over in Tennessee driving 8 people from Texas to Maryland who were unrelated to him and had no ID to show officers. He said the car he was driving was his boss's car, and his boss was a known human trafficker. And additionally, on 2 separate occasions, Kilmar...
Haven't looked it up, sorry, but I don't know who his boss is in regards to that. So again, quite a few pieces of information she's giving us, but no references as to where she got it.
Kilmar's wife got restraining orders against him for beating her, ripping her clothes off of her body, and causing her to fear for her life. This guy was a violent, repeat offending, illegal immigrant, and he has no place in our country. The American people spoke clearly last November that they were sick of the Biden open border policies and how he twisted and likely broke laws to bring in over 12 million more illegal immigrants. When this mass invasion was inflicted on our country, it was on purpose. You know, the Nazi administration purposely fled in our country with non-citizens for census and redistricting purposes because liberal politicians...
Okay, here's the hyperbole. It's to accuse President Biden. I am for stronger immigration policies, stronger border enforcement, but a lot broader than what they talk about and a lot more in regards to, again, policy. We need better policy. Congress made an attempt last year, probably a little over a year ago. Can't remember the exact time, but it was beginning of the election season or during the election season. So Trump said Republicans don't vote for it because, we don't want to give Biden a win. We had a chance to put something in place, but was it strong enough? Of course, everybody will differ based on their opinion and their viewpoint. Fine. I thought it was a fair step, thought it could have done more. But her hyperbole about how Biden was basically intentionally letting all these people in is some right-wing speak to create fear that Democrats are out to take your lives away from you, take your livelihoods. This has not been based on any real facts, any real statistics, or any real statements from anybody saying they want to do it. Oh, there's a couple of people who have said something they've kind of pulled out of context. But they do this, and somewhat sad, we do need stronger policy. Why do we need all the hyperbole?
Openly said, this is not me putting words in their mouth. They openly said they need the population in places like California, and New York, and Illinois. So under Joe Biden, we impeached Alejandro Mayorkas. They set about with the largest human trafficking operation our country has ever seen. And they basically worked with violent cartels, pushed billions of into
Worked with violent cartels, yet no references to where they get that information.
non-governmental organizations that somehow can only exist with taxpayer funding. And they use them to transport illegal immigrants who were completely unvetted, to transport them all over the country. And hundreds of thousands of Americans lost their lives because of these disgraceful acts.
Okay, hundreds of thousands of Americans have lost their lives because of these disgraceful acts. Okay, the 2 or 3 minutes leading up to this, all that hyperbole, she makes a stat. Okay, I looked this up because that sounded way off. Crime statistics. Total murders, manslaughters, homicides in the United States for the last 3 or 4 years averaged in the lower 20s. Before that, it was in the teens, and I'm talking about 19, 18, 17. Of those 22,000 murders, not 100 were committed by illegal aliens, according to Customs and Border Patrol statistics. Not me, not some outside agency, Custom and Border Patrol statistics. Using that, you would have to go back 100 years to get to 1,000 murders. Not hundreds of thousands, 1,000. Again, you can say we want stronger border policy. This hyperbole is insane. Used to scare people based on nothing. There was nothing that she said that was verifiable in that last minute. And this is what ticks me off. Just give us real information. And, again, why is she not in front of a crowd? Why is she not in front of an audience doing this town hall? Because she's going to say things like this that just infuriate anybody who's paying attention. I don't know what to tell you. You can't say hundreds of thousands of people when you have nothing even close that's verifiable. You don't have 1,000 in the last 10 years. And again, it would take probably 100 years to get to 1,000. The last few years, 2017, 3, 2018, 3, 2019, 2, 2020, 3, 21, 60, 22, 62, 23, 29. That's not 100 in 8 years. Sorry, that kind of madness just, it makes you question everything she says. We'll go on, though.
In response, the House and Senate passed the Lake and Riley Act. We're not just doing this and expecting that the administration is going to change and all these executive orders that the Trump administration has used very effectively are going to go away. We are actually looking to codify a lot of this. But the Lake and Riley Act was signed into law by President Trump on January 29th, and that was to stop violent criminal aliens from being released after committing a crime. The Lake and Riley Act mandates that federal detention of illegal immigrants who are accused of theft, burglary, assaulting a law enforcement officer, and any crime that causes death or serious bodily injury. I would really hope that this is a nonpartisan issue, that you don't have to be a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent to think that this is important to protecting our members of our community.
Honestly, on the surface, I agree.
The pro-illegal immigration extremists are now screaming about due process if the president does exactly what he said he was going to do if elected. He's conducting mass deportations, starting with the worst first, violent criminal aliens.
Sounds good on the surface. Here's where, of course, all the problems begin. And, of course, the issues of due process and all that just prove they're the worst. I know the Maryland dad, there's some controversy about exactly who he is. Is he as bad as they say? Is he not as bad as they say? I care. I don't want to say I don't care, but you got to prove it to me. You can't just start throwing people in prisons in another country, just because you say he's bad. I don't get why people don't realize this is important. And of course, since then, there's been a few other incidences of these kind of problems, of them not really proving the person they deported was the top of the list, the first people that need to go. Do I agree we don't want violent criminals from another country roaming our streets? But I don't agree that you can just randomly make statements about this and randomly round people up with at least some verification, authentication, showing the American public that's what you're doing correctly.
It's funny how these same people said nothing about due process when Obama and Clinton were deporting millions of illegal immigrants. But the reason is it's not about due process. This is their goal is to stop all deportations because they want these people in America. They want to turn them into citizens one day because the left believes that this is how you hold on to power. And again, this is not Beth Van Dyne or Beth Van.
There has been no proof that illegal aliens or legal aliens are voting in mass numbers for the Democrats. You have to be a citizen to vote. Minutiae amount, less than 1% of, significantly less than 1% of immigrants vote. Way minute, not much at all. Sorry, the amount is ridiculously low for them to say this. You know, if they have a coordinated plan, someone put on paper, show it.
And I'm often saying this. This is Democrats telling you this directly. Last year, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke of New York admitted that was the reason when she said she wanted more illegal immigrants in her district for redistricting purposes.
To a point, you get numbers, but they still can't vote. So I don't know what happened there with that New York congressman. I can see logic behind it. If you are trying to do it, you get more people in your district, you get a larger district, it does redistrict things. But even if she did that, they still don't vote. And so you've kind of got an iffy situation here where she's claiming one thing that the Congresswoman said, but alluding to something different.
American citizens are rapidly leaving failed states like California and Illinois and New York, and they're traveling to states in the South. They're traveling to places like Tennessee and Florida, and yes, absolutely Texas. Democrats know they're scared.
Florida housing listings are up. And where are they moving? New York. It was an article I read. I wish I'd kept that article, but it showed a significant migration away from Florida. But I probably shouldn't have brought it up because I didn't reference the source correctly.
Staring down a census in 2030 that will decimate electoral strength in congressional districts from some of its most important states. And that is why they're trying to backfill this population loss with mass illegal immigration. We have a president, we have an administration that is fighting this, that proved in 20 days, it didn't even take the 30 days that Tom Homan said it would. It took 20 days for them to get control of our border. Did they have to rely on a massive bill being passed out of Congress? No. What they had to do was actually enforce the laws that we already had on our books, and they did it, and you are seeing some of the most successful deportation measures taken in the most secure border in our nation. History. So I want to make sure that we are answering your questions. Don't forget, you can press *3 at any point if you've got a question. And I mentioned earlier about what our office does when we're not in D.C., when I'm not in here,
Okay, I'm going to fast forward to this part of the town hall. She does not, and I give her this, she does a great job of some of the ancillary services that Congress does for their citizens, what you can do when you visit, things of this nature. I'm going to skip this part for this podcast, but it is talking about, I guess, citizen services, things you can do, call their office about, things of this nature. So feel free to, contact her at any time if you're going to go to DC, or if you need things that Congress might be able to help. There's another incident that's going to come up in the town hall where they talk about same thing. I'll skip over it, but some stuff they do for veterans. If you're a veteran, they're very specific. Gentlemen have asked very specific questions about helping needs. I'll let her touch on that a little bit, but we're going to skip through this part right now.
This summer, we will be hosting, backed by popular demand, our fourth North Texas job fair. Multiple events to present accommodations.
This, raising the reconciliation.
Which is why, as part of the United States of America Vietnam War commemoration, define eligible Vietnam-area veterans, and we present them with a commemorative lapel pin for their service. And for veterans who serve during a very...
Representative Van John, thank you for taking my question. Budget reconciliation. As I understand it, there are two sides to the budget reconciliation process, the tax side and the spending side. Tax side, particularly from your vantage point on ways and means. There's been a lot of discussion of late of increasing the top rate and the corporate tax rate to fund extension of the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act tax cuts. We're getting Nick Singles out of the administration. The president, if I remember correctly, has said he's not in favor of increasing any rates, though some of his staff have indicated it is a track. Members of the Congress, Republican members of Congress, have talked about this, raising the top rate and the corporate rate as long as we don't get back up to pre-2017 rates, but maybe going up a little bit more. What is your perspective on this? Are we going to see a top and corporate tax rate increases? Now, on the spending side, Speaker Johnson came out, I believe it was yesterday, and said he's committed to $1.5 trillion in 10-year reductions at least, though many members of the House, particularly the Freedom Caucus, are talking in terms of $2 trillion over 10 years. Where do you see this going?
Well, I appreciate those questions. I really do. So your first question, are we going to see a tax increase on corporations or on individuals? If I have a vote on this, it will be no. I think very clearly President Trump said during his State of the Union, and he also repeated it today, that he is not in favor of increasing taxes. That what he wants to do is have a across-the-board tax decrease, and I could not agree with him more. I don't think we have a revenue-raising problem in the U.S. We have a spending problem, which is why I was one of the 26 other members who, when we had that vote on the Senate budget bill, that I was wanting to get more commitment from the Senate that they would actually agree to spending cuts. We had spent so much money that there's a reason why we are quickly approaching $37 trillion in debt. No business, no household can operate the way that the government wants. Your second question, and so, by the way, I just want to let you know that we are putting together this bill. We're looking at the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We looked at that as being such a wonderful response to a need that businesses had. We have been...
I think she needed to clarify when she says cuts, is she talking about adding to the cuts of 2017 or just keeping the same cuts? Little bit unclear to me.
Across the country in field hearings talking to small businesses, and if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions are not extended, you're going to see it hurt the middle class the most. What we've heard from small businesses specifically in our district is that they may have to get shut down. They definitely won't be able to invest more in their employees or in their growth. So we are absolutely on top of that. When you asked about what plans we have moving forward on reconciliation, the first one had to do with spending, the second one had to do with on taxes. I think I answered both of those questions. But it's important to me that we get this bill passed. Including in this bill will also be allowing the necessary resources to Homeland Security for Tom Homan to make sure that they are moving forward.
She gets into some specifics. I'm going to fast forward. I think the talking points from Republicans on this, she covered the main ones. They want to cut back on spending. As a conservative, I'm for cutting back on spending, but how do we cut back on spending is, of course, what we're really looking at and what they're trying to cut. The arguments about Medicaid and things like that, you've heard or you can hear, but I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I'm going to skip through some of this.
Representative.
Great to have you on tonight. So how can I help you? What question do you have?
Oh, yes. I said to your screener, we've had 8 years of lawfare against Trump, and now we have the rogue leftist judges coming against him nearly at every step. And I am very, very angry, and I want to know what we can do about it, or what Congress can do about it to stop this and shut this down and let Trump, do his agenda and the mandate for the American people.
No, I agree with you. We have seen it.
Okay, this is a super partisan question, lawfare against Trump. There are some people on the right who promote this thought. I find it abhorrent that they even talk in this way. Does Trump get treated unfairly? You can make your own determination of that. I'm not a Trump supporter. I have severe reservations about people calling lawfare against Trump when some of the things he does are questionable. I'll just leave it at that. We'll try to be civil here. So we'll go on. So I'm going to skip some of her answer, but she's saying that she agrees with the question, as you kind of just heard for half a second. But I'm going to skip through until the next question.
Venezuelans, as well as the Lincoln Riley Act to protect American citizens. Actually, he's opposed to it. President Trump, I think, in the priorities of the American people, how closely Texas is to our southern border, and how what they say
against him nearly at every step. And I am very, very angry, and I want to know what we can do about it, or what.
Understand what their positions are, what they're
Boy, these are softball questions for them.
That they've waged against this president is getting kicked to the curb. The House passed the no vote act. That's what it was. Which would limit the power of district judges and state that they're willing the judges into the judiciary. Operation Lone Star was something that the state of Texas had to be able to protect our borders, because what we saw was Biden was not doing it. And we invested $11.26 billion included in our reconciliation and our appropriations package, and I think that we're going to be successful. But I took this call, so I'll get an update in a little bit, see how the call with the governor went. But I really appreciate your interest and the question. Let's see. We're going to get back real fast to, other questions come in. I want to talk a little bit about, because I know today is Trump's 100th day in office.
Okay, she talks a bit here about the 100 days in office. Of course, these are going to be all pro-Trump talking points. There's been quite a bit of stuff in the news from the Trump administration about what they think is successful. I'm going to skip through this because it's almost old news. Like I said, I recorded this earlier this week. I'm just now getting around to doing this podcast. Yet the hyperbole behind it, a little high. So they've done their own touting. I don't think we need to rehear that again unless you want to. You can find this. And again, I'm going to try to put the raw recording on my website also. So if you want to make your own determinations, feel free. I'm going to see if I can get both the podcast and the raw recording up simultaneously. I am a tech neophyte and a tech paranoia, so wish me luck on that. But you'll see some end result here, and then you'll see some, based on me rambling here, you'll know that it's up.
And in order for our country to have a true manufacturing renaissance, and national media is so critical of Trump, our businesses, our products are treated fairly around the world. This is about making American businesses globally competitive so that we can have those jobs here having these third-party audits. We want to make sure that we are focused on getting rid of waste. In the days of bloated bureaucracy, open borders, and unfair trade are over. As a reminder, please press *3 at any point if you'd like to ask a question. And we've got another question up. Brett, how are you doing tonight?
Great. So I wanted to inquire about whether anything's going to be done about outsourcing services jobs overseas, and whether we would have tariffs on American companies that are taking good-paying services IT jobs and having them done in foreign countries.
So I'm just going to fact check everything when I
That's a great
do my
question.
podcast.
When I was there, I concentrate on
All
making
these
sure
questions
that
are-
we were bringing and doing what we could to have a positive environment,
Are favorable to
environment,
her.
to make sure that our American companies were as competitive as possible. We want to make sure that these American businesses can hire the best of the best, but we are also doing what we can in our tax bill to have incentives to have those companies work in our country. So right now we're putting together a tax package that actually incentivizes, for example, bringing back manufacturing jobs. And looking at what we can do to have those not only brought back to America, but incentivizing those who work with them. On the IT side, we want to make sure that we're competitive. We want to lead the world in AI technology and recognize that there are a lot of countries that are working on that. You've got a lot of brilliant minds across the globe, and we want to make sure that our U.S. companies have access to those. But we also don't want them doing it as a way to be able to hire people outside the country that could be doing those jobs here. I think we've got an opportunity with a number of bills that have been introduced this past legislative cycle as well as this current legislative cycle to do just that. To me, it's getting the thoughts of those in that industry, and we have a lot of them in Texas 24 that have been talking to me about that. It needs to be common sense legislation and looking at an immigration policy that is smart for American businesses, but also make sure that we're not, selling ourselves out and outsourcing those most critical needs, because that's what we've been doing in the past because it's cheap labor, but it has not come without pain. So I very much appreciate the question. Okay, Leo.
I left that question in her answer because I think that was probably a straightforward question, and an answer that does answer the question. You can take it or leave it whether or not you agree for it or not. Outsourcing jobs. I mean, that's one of the big complaints of American workers is that, all these jobs were sent overseas. Of course, there's this big argument. Did we want those jobs? I don't know, but she addressed it and she was making valid points from her viewpoint. So we left that one in because it was pretty much straight question and answer part of the town hall.
Leo, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great, Congress.
To me, it's getting the thoughts of those in that industry, and we have a lot of them in Texas 24 that have been talking to me about that. It needs to be. Okay, Leo. Okay, Leo. Okay, Leo. Leo, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great, Congresswoman Van Dyne. Listen, thanks for all your hard work that you're putting in, and I can tell you're energetic for us. So it's really an inspiration to me to hear that, and keep up the good work. But here's my question: I wanted to ask you, where would a person go to get assistance, on help if they have a small business, or the programs that you guys are enacting, or what Donald Trump is enacting, and how you can figure out how to get some support.
So the Small Business Administration actually has looked.
This is a great question to show constituent services. Again, like I said, there are a couple in this town hall. She answers specifically how he can get help, references the Small Business Administration, a couple other things. I'm going to skip through the answer for time. But again, Congress is all representatives in the House, all senators. They do have constituent services for things like this. I think his question was a little broader than an individual help based on what he said? Again, the answer is general, but it is part of constituent services what your representative is doing, all representatives throughout the country, for you as an individual citizen. And there's going to be another one coming up too that I'm going to fast forward through. But I'm going to let you hear the question just so you can get an idea of what people ask their Congress, the representative about.
Find out what bank accounts that they're transmitting to, and I'm hoping that they've stopped all that, and if they're able to cut doing here, and
Call our office, our district office, I'm assuming you are in the district, call our district office at 972-966-5500, and we'd like to be able to help you out. That's your job, right? So to make sure that you can navigate through the vast federal bureaucracy that it is. And if we can connect you to the agencies so that you can kind of, identify where you need that help the most, that's what we want to do. So very much appreciate the call. Look forward to getting call to our office, making sure that you're getting help that you need from the SBA as a taxpayer-funded agency. All right, we're going to move on to our next caller, Martin.
This is a loaded question coming up.
Martin, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing here. And my question has to do with the travesty that Musk and his team exposed with regards to, there's so many things, but obvious fraud going on with Social Security. People that are over 100 years old, 150 years old, still getting money deposited to their bank accounts through our system. And I'm just wondering if they're able to trace that. I mean, surely you can follow the money and you can find out what bank accounts that they're transmitting to. And I'm hoping that they've stopped all that, and if they're able to recover any of that money and put those people in jail for fraud.
Okay, my mistake. That was not the loaded question that's coming up. That was a question that was based on, unfortunately, an ill-informed, uninformed person that hears stuff, either only caught part of the answers or stories, or has just been listening to some really invalid sources about what's going on with Social Security, or made some assumptions on his own. I don't know. We're not going to worry about that. But this is a problem when we've got some of the social media out there. There's an example of people who get ramped up enough to ask their congressman about it, a congressperson about it, because they are thinking that there's something going on that isn't, based on what they've heard through probably non-valid sources. So there's that. I'm going to skip through the answer. There's a person who comes up later that actually calls this out. She does not. I think I'll let the person speak exactly what happened. She does not correct this individual in her answer. But we're going to go on to the next question. This is another constituent services. I'm going to let her touch on it a little bit.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Hi, doing well. Thank you for doing this, and also thank you for taking my call. I'm a disabled veteran, and I've been battling the VA for over 14 years now regarding my disability rating, and I'm sure I speak for all my fellow veterans here that the frustration of dealing with the VA is very high. So my question is there, do you or your administration department, do they have a specific thing that us veterans might be able to use to help combat the VA in regards to getting the disability rating that we are deserved?
That's a great question. And as I stated earlier, our job is to actually help you. So admitting that department, the purpose of that department is to help our veterans, especially those most in need, and we didn't feel like we were doing that. So I appreciate the action that were taken during this first administration. We'll try to continue that. But if you've got specific casework, which it sounds like you do, we have people in our office dedicated specifically to help our veterans. And so I would ask that you call our office. That's what we're there for. Use our caseworkers. Call 972-96.
Go on to the next question.
Call our office. That's what we're there for. Use our caseworkers. Call 972.
A question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm concerned that you didn't stop this gentleman, which is a lie about Social Security payments, when he says Doge.
This is where I talked earlier about the person being ill-informed, and the Congresswoman did not call out some of his misleading facts or incorrect facts, and they let someone come in and call the Congresswoman out for it.
Has found payments to people getting Social Security payments over the age of 150 because it's not true. It's been documented that it's written in COBOL. There's a 2-digit date code. Plus, there's a policy that was put in forth in 2015 that totally stops Social Security payments once you reach the age of 115. Not only that, 0.1% of Social Security payments are made to individuals over 100. So why didn't you correct that mistaken impression instead of just saying, yeah, that's what we're doing for stopping all this fraud? Because fraud is not taking place for payments of individuals 150 years old.
So you're talking about, so I was answering a question about Doge and about Social Security, because I can sit there, I can pick on people who call into our office, or I can actually figure out what the question is that they're asking, and I believe the question that the gentleman was asking was about what is Doge doing to identify those costs and how are we following up the actual fraud, waste, and abuse. And I would argue Doge has found cases of waste, fraud, and abuse where people who live outside of our country were getting Social Security benefits, but people who had actually died were getting Social Security benefits, or people who were actually here illegally were getting Social Security benefits. That has happened. It has been identified, and I think that we are being very clear. And I don't think he would be in the same boat. You don't want those dollars going to people who should not get them, right? I mean, let's be honest with each other. We can sit here and try to make this political, or we can have a real conversation and admit none of us want to have our taxpayer dollars wasted. None of us want it to go to people who shouldn't be in our country, who should not be in our country, who are here illegally. We have a lot of people with a lot of need. And our government should be focused on making sure that the folks who need it the most are getting it. And that's not being used or sent out of the country. And I would hope that people would get behind those efforts and support them, recognizing the fact that funds are limited. But to make sure that these programs are being used in the most efficient and legal way possible, I would hope, and I think at the end of the day, we all recognize the fact. We may not like who is saying it, but we want that effort to continue regardless of who is.
Okay, she goes into a talking point. She never really answers the question about why she didn't correct the gentleman. She goes into, of course, their talking points about, we don't want to give money to illegal aliens and all that, which the reality of the question was the gentleman was misinformed. You could have corrected him, let him know that some of that fraud, if there's other fraud abuse, fine, go after it. I'm not very confident. Personally, I'm not very confident in Doge's efforts. I don't see the fraud being generated or publicized to the American public, the exact specifics of it versus what they say they're doing. She's kind of walking along the line of, well, Doge is doing a great job, but, don't question it. Just, be happy they're doing something about fraud when we really don't know what they're doing about fraud. It's the kind of the Republican gloss over of a bigger problem. If there is waste and fraud, bring it forward. I haven't seen it brought forward. And again, she deflects, tries to go to the illegal aliens a little bit, but never just says, hey, that man needed to be better informed. I get it. That's what they do a lot. If they don't like the way it's presented, they'll scoot over to their talking points. Now, honestly, we all know historically politicians do that, but it was pretty straightforward. Just answer the question, why can't you, tell your constituents that's a mistake? Here's the real information. The guy tried to give some example of how it worked where that problem has come up, that people think that people at 150 years old are getting Social Security checks, but no one's going and pulling money back from bank accounts because there's no money in bank accounts to pull back. It's frustrating for any politician. In today's era, it's even more frustrating.
So I do appreciate your question. I don't agree with the sentiment of it, but I really do appreciate you being on the call tonight and sharing the question with us. I hope you have a great night.
Also, my apologies for some of my background comments during the original recording. Some things just drive me crazy when you hear it.
We're going to go ahead and move on. We have another caller. Allison from Dallas. How are you doing tonight?
Good. Thank you very much for taking my call. In the daily address that President Trump provided when he was talking about the Tax Cut and Job Act bill, he proposed bringing back 100% bonus depreciation and capital expenditure. This would greatly benefit my business clients. I'm a CPA, and I'm certain the clients that mentioned about and would love to see bonus depreciation, 100% bonus depreciation come back. What are you going to do to make sure that gets passed?
That is a wonderful question. It is a point that has been brought up to our attention over the last 2.5 years since I have been on Ways and Means. This has been something that has been brought up as a focus from small businesses across the country. And this is what I said. It doesn't matter what industry, what district that you're in. This is shared.
My apologies. I can't get the question very clear. I'm not 100% sure what she's driving at. I'm going to let the Congresswoman answer the question a little bit. She's going to tout a bunch about the Small Business Administration and small business. I'm for helping small business, very for helping small business. Let you decide on your own based on her answer if you think she's being constructive with how she wants to help.
By small businesses everywhere. We are trying our best to make sure that this tax package that we are working on right now, that we part of this one big, beautiful bill, has that included in it. It is set to expire at the end of this year, and we want to make sure that we are seeing those tax provisions that would have expired extended. And I'll tell you, it's part of the job to make sure that we build a care pathway, have paid for, but it also makes it a lot more confusing trying to set up tax policy. The reason why those policies that were established in the 2017 PCJA expired is because we didn't have enough money to pay for them. What we actually saw was tremendous benefits in economic growth, that businesses started taking a lot more opportunities to invest, to bring back offshoring back to the U.S., to invest in their employees, to invest in the future growth of their business. But because these provisions expire at the end of this year, and there was not a consistency with those rules, and there was not.
Bit of confusion on my part. I don't think too many small businesses are offshoring their jobs. I think she's going in a different direction, but I'm not going to, again, I didn't hear the question very well, and I'm not going to beat you up trying to get it clear. So I'm letting her answer play because I'm a little off on the question, but again, not too many small businesses offshore their jobs.
No quantity, whether or not they would be extended. It's been estimated that American businesses did not and would have, if they had not expired, would have invested an additional $800 billion into our economy. So we are working on this tax bill to extend them because we want businesses. We want
no reference in where she gets that $800 billion.
We want private sector side. We want those dollars hiring people, buying American products, building more factories within our country. So I can tell you, yes, what we're doing about it on Ways and Means, we're including it in our next tax package, and we just got to make sure that that we get enough votes and support for it. So I can tell you that's what I've been working on, and I really appreciate it to tell you that your sentiments are shared by people across the country. All right, Alyssa?
Yes, hello.
Hey, Alyssa, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good.
I really appreciate all of the work that you're doing with small businesses. However, with the current tariff situation, small businesses really don't have the equity available to go out and build factories immediately. Even if they did, it would take probably 3 to 5 years to adequately get up and running to provide things like toys and gifts that are not manufactured currently in the United States. A lot of companies depend on this type of product to be successful. And with the current situation, we're seeing a lot of shipments not coming in. They're actually being held in China. They're not even making it to the ports in the United States. I think that's part of the reason that gas prices are going down so significantly. There's a lot less traffic picking up things from ports. So we're already starting to see a big problem coming down the pipeline. And I wanted to see where you stand on the tariff situation and what you plan to do to help the small businesses in your.
This is a well put together question. She obviously deals with a small business issue. Another one, she understands kind of the basics of what's happening, which, like she said, it takes a few years to build a factory. A lot of the small businesses are not manufacturing type businesses themselves. They have to rely on someone else doing the manufacturing. They're retailers. So, unless they're craft type companies, small businesses, they're not going to have means of production. And like the caller said, the person asked the question, what are we supposed to do in the interim? So let's hear the answer.
Territory, help them, get through this tough situation.
I really appreciate that question. I've been working with small businesses now for over 21 years. Since I was on the city council, since I was mayor, we're really focused on 90% of all businesses in America are small businesses and making sure they can be competitive, whether or not that's cutting regulations. Because, we probably don't have a regulatory department. So when you're looking at regulations, it's something that, one regulation can open or close your business. It can decide on that. So that's something that we are trying to focus on is on the regulatory reform. We're making sure SBA is directing dollars towards small businesses within the U.S., that they're not just concentrating on certain groups, but they're opening it up to be competitive throughout all small businesses in the U.S. We also want to make sure that it's only going to U.S. companies and not, illegally. That's why one of the bills that I just introduced to do that. Specifically on the question on tariffs, I'm going to give this administration a little bit of leeway because I know what happened in the first Trump administration. There was a lot of second guessing and a lot of assumptions, negative assumptions, and a lot of criticism. But what we found in the first administration was while there was a lot of criticism and fear of what the tariff situation would cause, it actually benefited American businesses. Take, for example, steel. We found that 4,000 new jobs came about in America in the steel industry as a direct result of the tariff that President Trump put on. We found that imports from China decreased by 24%, and that we were actually manufacturing them in our country. We've heard a lot of negative talk because tariffs have been said, different
I don't know how to answer. I tried looking up her stat about the trade deficit going down after the tariffs from Trump's first term. I'm not getting good data. To get good data is going to cost me money. I'm not a well-known user of money. Ask my family. Also, this is just an amateur podcast, so I'm not going to spend a lot of money trying to get data sets in regards to whether or not that is factually correct. It caught me off guard because I don't think it is, but I'm stuck. Trade deficit with China, trade balance. There's different ways you can pose the question too in regards to how she answered it. So if you get a chance to do your own research, I tried going to some official sites or at least some commercial sites, and they want my money to give an answer. Tried researching 10 years of trade with China. You're going to get into some, corporations that, monitor that, things of that nature. And so corporations, they want to make money. But we're going to go on.
The cabinet are having competing ideas on tariffs. I'll tell you, I think there's three things this president's trying to get from tariffs. I think one is to really get help from countries like China and Mexico that are a direct harm to our national security. Whether that's looking at China and the fentanyl coming over, or it's looking at Mexico and the drug cartel activities that are happening, it really needs to get their attention and said, we need your help. So I think the most punitive tools that you have seen tariffs being used for are the.
That's a rare answer used, but sometimes answer used by the Republicans to talk about some of the tariffs. I mean, we all know that Trump kind of worked with or claimed Mexico and Canada, the fentanyl from those two countries was outrageous and it needed tariffs to get them to wake up about how much fentanyl is coming, and the Mexican president worked with him. The Canadian amount of fentanyl coming from the Canadian border is minuscule. So that's a hard one to dig into for this particular podcast, but they do kind of question about tariffs with some answers to that effect. Quite sure how effective it is. Let you decide. The question in general is a little bit deflected, but we'll keep going.
Those countries that really that have been hurting our national security. I think the second benefit the second goal of tariffs is to really make more reciprocal trade. Right now, there's a $1.3 trillion deficit in trade. Americans paid out about $360 billion last year in tariffs, while the U.S. collected about $79 billion. We need to even that out. We want to have free trade, but we also want to have fair trade. I think the third thing that this president is looking at as a goal is to get revenue from tariffs. Before 1913, that was the U.S.'s primary revenue stream, was tariffs. So I know right now it seems like
that methodology has been highly criticized as you were taxing the lower and middle classes more to pay for the wealthy having tax breaks, because tariffs are added to consumer goods. The middle class, working class, they are the people who consume the goods. So it sounds like it's a great thing. We're going to get more revenue from tariffs. Most definitely you can. That is a fact. But who's paying for them? I think it's, of course, with all the MAGA people, it's legacy media, so they don't believe it. But you have to realize there's a cost to, whatever you do, someone's going to pay for it. And you can either tax wealthy people higher, you can revamp the entire tax code, or you can throw tariffs on imports and say, we're taxing Mexico and China when actually the producers in Mexico and China, and it's not the governments, Mexico and China government is not paying these tariffs. It's the people who produce goods in Mexico and China and all the other countries. And then the people who import it, the people who sell the goods to the wholesalers and to the retailers, they get hit with this cost. So yes, the producers get hit with it. They raise their prices. The wholesalers get hit with it. They raise their prices, and the retailers get hit with it. They raise their prices. That's where you as a consumer get hit with the cost. You are paying for the tariffs. You may not like to hear it, but you are paying for the tariffs unless for some strange reason, either and or all three of those entities in the supply chain process decides not to add them to their cost. Don't see it happening. You are going to be paying for the tariffs.
it's just chaos. I would argue that in the last 8 years that this president has sought to put together the strategy, that he's brought together some of the most increase manufacturing in the U.S.
There is a group of people in Trump's administration who tout that and are very strongly touting that. Whether or not it really is going to be successful, it's going to be a wait and see that's going to hurt many people in this country before we find out if this is true or not. That's one of the big problems with this is they have a plan. I mean, some of them, maybe not all of them, but some of them in that administration do have a plan they think is going to work to bring back jobs to this country. The amount of things that need to go right to make that happen is enormous. So even with what plan they have, they are stepping out more than they're willing to admit.
I concur to a Rubik's Cube. Each of these countries are going to be treated, specifically. They're going to personalize the tariffs by country. It's not just one, size fits all. And that he's had an opportunity to really come up with a strategy. But right now, it does seem that it's chaotic. I would argue that it's organized chaos, and that these responses from these various countries have been proven out. We've got 75 countries right now that we're negotiating with to get better.
We've heard that number for a couple weeks now. It's been almost a week since this was recorded. There is no news on that front. Even one person said they're negotiating with 200 countries. Well, they're including the country with penguins if they're doing that. So we got to think about how do we hold them accountable for this knowledge? Because they're asking us to wait so they can be proven right. They may decide, we hope, they need to change course a little bit.
Ultimately, I believe that the market is responding the way it is because it does not have a clear tax package, which we have promised to have out of Ways and Means and out of the House. We're looking at a Memorial Day deadline. We would love it to be on the president's desk by 4th of July. So I think having that knowledge, what's going on in our future tax policy will help the markets. And I think having the tariffs have an opportunity right now to get negotiated, get some of the best deals on the table, and then, by around this time next year, you're going to see those benefits pay off.
She is true that if they pass a tax package, it will help the markets. But that's not basically you, that's the markets. So the people who make billions with market movements will have a pretty good idea how they want to plan their year in their investment strategies. Doesn't mean it's going to be you that's going to be helped out by this. You got a good 401k? Yeah, you probably are going to get a little bit of benefit. Big picture though, that when they say it helps the markets, it's helping billionaires plan their investment strategy.
Interim, I agree with you on the small business side. It is rough not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. And I stand with you. I've gotten a lot of calls from small businesses saying, what do we do? My advice is let our office help you where we can on Small Business Administration. But literally hang in there on trade. We're doing our best to make sure our U.S. companies are in the best, most competitive position that they can possibly be in to be able to compete with the global markets. So I know that we are rapidly coming to a close. I don't want to take any more of your time, but I really want to appreciate everybody who stayed on with us tonight.
Okay, so she basically said, wait and see on the tariffs for small businesses. Maybe the Small Business Administration may help you. She's getting ready to close the town hall. My closing comments are, no one could confront her on her facts in the town hall. I know, again, like I said up front, she deserves a civil town hall. Probably not going to get it in today's environment. The market has started to correct itself in a positive fashion for the Trump administration since the first of the month when things went crazy when he announced his tariffs. And then he went back and forth on tariffs and the pauses and all that. But realistically, they've got to come up with a better plan in regards to how they're going to help small business. She didn't touch on it. She said that maybe people can go to the Small Business Administration for help. Are they going to create loans for people? What do they mean, go to the Small Business Administration for help? Earlier on, they talked about the Veterans Administration, and yeah, there's problems. Well, there's been problems with the Veterans Administration. According to some articles, some veterans, some history, I'm not a veteran per se directly, so I don't have immediate dealings with the Veterans Administration. I've talked to many that are. There are some general service complaints, things of that nature. That man saying he'd been working for 14 years to get a rating resolved. I'm not quite sure what that is all about. But my point is, saying go to Small Business Administration. They say they're going to Veterans Administration, and yet these are the types of program that DOJ is cutting people from. If you need help with customer service, you need people to help the customers. I want to see the government budget cut. I am not a fan of how DOJ is doing it. Said that before, and I'll say it in the future. They did it completely wrong. It was cute. It was funny. Made for lots of headlines, but you start reading the headlines now, it was pretty ineffective, and a lot of people were hurt. Families, people losing jobs. It's not the way to cut a budget. You give time to people to plan for this. They did offer some, leave now, you'll get paid through X month, I think September for some of them. But then they were still cutting people right and left. Some of the even more, the Social Security fraud. You're giving people who really aren't auditors and accountants responsibility for finding fraud. It's a very particular, meticulous endeavor to do that. It's not something you can just whack away and say, well, we cut fraud because we cut away a bunch of programs we didn't like. Big difference. Anyway, like I said, she's about to wrap up. Wish we had some people there that could have. There were a couple attempts at calling her out. She deflected on them. This was very managed, very friendly to her, very friendly to the Republican mindset, or the MAGA mindset, the Trump mindset. I know there are some Republicans that don't like Trump, but right now, few and far between in the political world, in the Washington, D.C. world, maybe more in the country. There's many more. We need our congressmen coming to us and talking to us more. Things have gotten a little crazy for the Republicans, especially with DOJ. Their town halls were getting out of hand. I'm curious as to if other congressmen are trying this approach to act like, well, we're doing them, but they're doing them in very, very controlled circumstances. A phone, they have the ability to pick and choose the questions. I do give them a tad bit of credence for picking a couple that did address a couple things, but really calling them out, didn't hear it. A lot of praise, high praise at the beginning of some of these questions. So, where's the real confrontation? Where's the real answer to the people? I don't know. Like I said, she's about to finish up.
I know that it's kind of a pain, but for those of you who are wondering why we didn't do this in person, the fact is that we had several thousand people on this call tonight. We would not be able to do that in the district at any of the locations. I think it's great that parents with small kids or people who are taking care of their elderly parents have an opportunity to participate and not have to spend money on babysitters. So we're getting more people to be able to have this opportunity to ask questions, to get and hear what their answers are. And I want to make sure that you're using our office as a resource. So thank you so much for joining us, sharing your thoughts. If you've got any questions, please visit our website at mandine.house.gov. And there's so much that I would have liked to go into this evening, and I really look forward to speaking with you again soon. As always, please contact our office with any questions if we can be of assistance. Again, visit mandine.house.gov. You can also call our office direct at 972.
Okay, she did say that, more people could come. Yeah, more people could listen, but more people could not fact check, correct, ask, prod, follow up, get deeper into the issue. A lot of the town halls with people, they were a little longer than an hour. This is just under an hour. Like I said, I started probably a couple minutes late, so this probably ran right at an hour. My recording shows 56 minutes and 23 seconds. On that, where do we stand on this? Again, I think she should be in person. I think they should be more open. She says that there's no place they could do it to get the number of people they could get on a call. I don't know how well in advance people were made aware of this town hall via the phone. I know it was on her website 30 minutes beforehand, but said it was a reminder. I didn't dig deeper into her website to see how far. When did she start announcing this? I know I brag profusely. I don't vote for Democrats or Republicans in national elections. I have admitted this, and I will tell you this. I do vote in primaries for a few reasons. One, for the entertainment value. But two, because you find out, you get more of the communications from the actual representatives and things like that if you show up in the primaries, because they send information to people who are primary voters because that's who they consider their base, and they're going to be very friendly towards them. I don't vote in primaries every election, just occasionally. I voted in, my most famous one was the Clinton-Obama 2008 Democratic primary. It was fun to go to that one. It was really what democracy was about, because there was some pretty vocal people on both sides of that coin, and it was fun to watch. The scary part about all that, I had no interest in that outcome, so I don't know how. I became heavily involved in the math of determining how many delegates our precinct sent from all the camps. There were more than Clinton and Obama at the time. There were a couple other people who picked up a couple other delegates at the time that happened. The formula was contrived as heck. It was difficult to read through. There was some other problems going on. They were making honest efforts to get the right numbers, but you had to really play with the formula. But we finally, there was a few people. We sat down and plowed through the numbers and what the votes were from that precinct we were in at the time, and all of us felt really good that we got the right proportion of delegates based on the votes in that precinct. But it was a fun evening. I'm saying all this now because I recommend at some point you go to a primary, Democrat or Republican. For people like me, it's great because I say we want new parties. It helps understand what some of the problems are in running a primary and holding a precinct, event. Anyway, this is a long podcast for me. Since this was not well published by the Congresswoman, I wanted to give everyone a chance to hear it. I know I'm editing it based on my viewpoints, but there should be a raw version from her, I think. I don't know if it's out there. Anyway, y'all have a great day. It's a beautiful sunny day here in North Texas. It's May 3rd. You know how I feel. We had something that upset the heck out of me to begin today. So let's hope this beautiful day calms my mood down. But I am feeling spit in the face because of what happened earlier today. Y'all take care.